Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to this Life After 12 Step recovery meeting with our guest speaker, Meghan, who I'm going to introduce in a second. Hi, Meghan. My name's Liv. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the founder of the Life After 12 Step recovery community, and I'm one of our many amazing moderators. I'm not calling myself amazing, but our moderators are amazing. We are, for those of you who don't know, a virtual resource-based community held on Facebook for members who are in the process of leaving or who have already left 12-step recovery. We provide a safe landing spot to empower members to transition out of 12-step recovery into an autonomous, self-directed recovery. We do this through mutual aid support, skills building, workshops in the future, meetings, and we believe in a strengths-based, empowered approach. So today we're talking with Meghan Hetfield. I feel like I've spoken enough. Do you want to introduce yourself and your pronouns, Meghan?
Yeah, so my name's Meghan Hetfield. I use she, her pronouns. And yeah, super excited to be here. This is a lot of fun. I love talking about this. Thanks for having me. Should I just jump right into it, or did you want to say some more stuff?
I'm done with the stuff.
All right.
Tell us about you and what brought you here.
Yeah. So first of all, I just want to express gratitude for the fact that these networks exist. It's just like amazing to watch this group grow and to see people like leaving something in a way that's strength-based. I mean, when I left my 12-step fellowship, I was really lucky to have like support. You know, I already had some supports like in different areas of my life, and I felt connected to my community. I felt safe. And I didn't feel like I was free falling. I felt, you know, like it was a strength-based move for me, but a lot of people leave in a different way and don't have a place to land. So I just want to start off by saying, like, I'm just super pumped that this even exists. And I think it's amazing. And I was bragging to a friend in the car today about how there's places for people to go, you know, when they decide that they don't want to practice a certain pathway, they can switch. And today in a different meeting that I go to, somebody was saying, like, you know, the great thing about recovery is I can like do 12 steps and then I can switch to something else for a while. And if I want to, I can go back. Like, you know, that's what's so cool about recovery is it's self-defined. And for me, you know, it absolutely is self-defined. So if you haven't picked up on it by now, I am somebody with lived experience with like a really chaotic relationship with substances, drugs, alcohol. My mental health, you know, was a mess. It can still be, but I now identify as someone who no longer has a chaotic relationship with substances. And I work in the recovery space as a peer, a certified recovery peer advocate in New York State, and also a peer recovery support specialist. So, you know, needless to say, I love these spaces. I love what Liv's doing. And I love that all of y'all are here to learn more about something I love to talk about. All right. So, you know, I grew up in Miami, Florida, like in the burbs. And, you know, as a kid, I was like really curious about things outside. Like I had a big imagination. I have ADD. So I wasn't super hyper, but I was like in my head all the time, just like daydreaming and stuff. And I was always, you know, really fascinated with indigenous cultures of all kinds. I found some weird journals from when I was a little kid where I was writing about that like Mayan prophecy or whatever, that the world was going to end, you know, when I was like 8 or something. So all that to say, you know, I've always had an intuitive curiosity about, wow, that was hard, ancestral knowledge, indigenous knowledge. But, you know, like my mental health sucked. I've had like suicidal ideation and self-loathing like for my whole life, ever since I was a kid. And, you know, substances were what I found because I didn't have safe adults to talk to about my mental health. And, you know, I didn't have the right sort of lens to look at what was happening with me. Also like lots of PTSD and trauma. And the only thing, when I did decide to try to get help for my substance use disorder, and or my mental health, like the only thing that was ever thrown at me was abstinence. Nobody ever asked me what I wanted or what I needed or what these substances were doing for me. It was just like, you're an addict, you have a disease, there's no cure. And, this is what you need to do every day for the rest of your life. And your disease is going to be doing push-ups, waiting for you to slip up. So, have a nice life. You're 18, but you can't ever have a legal drink. And I didn't really like the sound of that much. So it didn't stick. I would try here and there. And every time I went to treatment, I had the same talk, from an adult of like, you're an addict or a disease. Like never, ever, ever was someone like, well, you're not medicating your ADD anymore. Like, what's that about? Or like, looks like you've had some trauma. I went through Hurricane Andrew. I don't know if anyone here is old enough to remember that, but it was like a devastating hurricane in Miami. Like we lost everything. There was nothing left. My neighborhood was just like piles of wood, like with people in them, and people died. And, it was like 6 months of no power with like tanks in the street. No big deal. Nobody ever asked me about that. I was always met with this like very prescribed black and white thing. If you don't move from this to this and do it absolutely perfect, then you're not in recovery, you're, actively using and all that stuff. And there were times in my, in these times I tried to stop. Like, for example, this one time I was doing really well. I was on the methadone program. I was working. I was staying with my parents, but I was like saving money and trying to figure some stuff out. And I came home one day and all of my stuff was moved out. Like my mom had moved all my shit to, pardon my French. Can I curse here, Liv? Is that cool? Okay, thanks. If anyone is bothered by it, just let me know. But my mom had moved all my stuff like into a sober house. And that was it. The locks were changed. And I was like, what? She had found a joint, like a clip of a joint outside. And her reaction, because of what people told her, like, you're enabling, she has to leave, she's relapsing. My mother moved all my stuff out and my dad, and that was that. And I'm sure y'all can guess what was happening within like a few weeks. Like, I did what they said I was going to do. I started using other substances again that weren't helpful for me at the time. And I wasn't on methadone anymore, and things were really bad. So, the reason I'm bringing all this up is just because, it sort of like gets us to where I am today, where I really believe that we need to ask people like about themselves, learn about them, learn about ourselves. Like what does someone want? What are their goals? What does a good day for them look like? A perfect day for me might sound like a nightmare for you. Like we're all different. It's not black and white. We all have different hopes, dreams, desires, goals. I really feel like if anyone had offered me any other like way of being in my own skin, I may have tried it, other than sitting in a chair in a church basement. So I'm sure, I'm not sure. I imagine maybe some of you identify with that feeling. As I got older, basically like the consequences of my chaotic use just like started to stack up, and eventually I moved to New York City when I was like 21. So I left Miami. I left a big city to go to a bigger city. And around 29, I got arrested for the first time, and I was charged with felony possession with intent to distribute for two $5 bags of Coke. And I was just telling Liv my experience. I was mandated to what they call a therapeutic community here in New York State. They're national, and there ain't anything therapeutic about them. This is a horrific, traumatizing place where they just yell at you morning, noon, and night. It was absolutely horrific. I was there for like 16 months. I could do a whole hour of talking just about that experience, but I wasn't helped by this place. I still wasn't given like counseling or anything. The one great thing that happened is I finally like I got to see a mental health professional like twice when I was there. And once it was because I had told someone I was like trying to kill myself there. And finally they're like, oh, well, maybe she needs mental health. Like, I'm only laughing now. I know it's not funny, but the way it all happened is just like, I can't do anything but laugh. It's just ridiculous. We send people to these places, So what it did do for me though is it took me out of urban city, and next thing I know, I was upstate New York, where I live now, in a town called Woodstock. And I did not really think about it at first, but after like over a year of being there, I started noticing some stuff. I started noticing the seasons were changing. I lived in New York State for almost 10 years at that point, and like had never really witnessed like the whole cycle like of the plants around me and the things that were happening. I started seeing things like birds and deer and like nature happening, and I kind of connected with that curious kid who was like, loved to be outside, even though it was like the suburbs in my backyard, the kid with the imagination. Like I started to, get back in touch with that kid, and started, becoming more curious about what was going on. And like one day they were taking us to Walmart. We were allowed to like use our crushed cans to get change and buy like candy or whatever, like once a month at Walmart. But they were taking us like over this bridge, and I got a glimpse of the mountains where I live, the Catskill Mountains. And it like took my breath away. I had never seen anything like that. I lived in New York State for almost 9 years and didn't know that there were wild spaces. Like most people, when I think of New York, I'm like, it's New York. No, like it's New York. New York City is just this little piece of it. And for a kid that grew up in Miami, like, it's beautiful, tropical, hot. I had never really experienced like, the mountains. I had traveled, but I was really high and I wasn't connected to that part of myself. I was like very focused on, a certain way of being in my own skin. Cities make me very, like ego based. Like for me, when I lived in cities, I always compare myself to everyone and like judge myself and feel like, oh gosh, like my job sucks, like I'm not as cool as she is, like I don't thrive there. But what happened was, for me being in a place like this, I started to feel more confident, and I started to like nurture that curiosity. But unfortunately, I was still in a 12-step group after 15 years of like being beat over the head with it. Like I decided to try it again because I was deathly afraid of ever going back to a place like that I was in. So I did like, find community, get some connection. It helped me find jobs. It helped me find friends because I didn't know anybody up here, but I decided to stay in this area. And after like, now we're going to skip a whole lot of my life. I had like 9 years of abstinence-based recovery in a 12-step fellowship in Narcotics Anonymous. I like hosted meetings. I took them into jails and prisons, all that stuff. But I started having physical pain in my body, like really bad. I remember I was driving. I used to commute an hour to work. And I remember feeling like something was leaking, like dripping on my shoulder. And I'm like, what is up? Is my car like, is there a hole in my roof of my car? But it was like nerve pain. That was the beginning of this nerve pain I have. And it was arthritis. I got diagnosed with arthritis. It's probably been like 5 or 6 years ago or more now. And I, started this journey of chronic pain. And alongside that, like some of my other mental health issues started to pop up. And I started, looking around me and utilizing the space I was in and the people I met. A lot of people in Woodstock, New York, go figure, are like herbalists and stuff, and I started getting curious about like how I could utilize plants to, not just like nourish my body, like eat plants. And, I took on like a vegetarian and mostly vegan diet. So I started getting more curious about like what plants I could eat and how I can, use that to make me feel better or whatever. Not that I'm saying everyone has to do that, but that's, where my curiosity started. And then I started getting more curious about, just the nature around me and like, how, what these cycles were, like what was happening. Like even when I was having a shit day, nature like was still doing its thing. The seasons were still happening, the birds were still singing. And slowly but surely, I started dipping my toe in the water of herbalism and learning more about plants and plant medicines. And, my very first experience that was not in alignment with 12-step was microdosing with psilocybin with mushrooms. This was going back like 5 years ago. I met a friend, actually. I was working as a recovery coach, and I met somebody who I watched them go from like, a really, really, really chaotic, like vodka in the morning, chugging in the shower person to like this, like enthusiastic fairy, like, flitting through life, like so happy and joyous. And I was like, what is it? Like, what, I mean, peer support is great, but like, what else is going on? And, she shared with me her journey of like microdosing, and it really impacted me. And I started researching it and learning more. And that was like, sort of opened the door for me to a lot of different things. And I remember one day, like walking, like out in my yard barefoot, and I wasn't like altered, it's a sub-perceptual amount. That's the thing that people don't understand. Like a lot of people use the word, oh, microdosing, but they're like tripping, microdosing means like a sub-perceptual amount of something, like where you can utilize the benefits without feeling altered. Like you are not supposed to be like hearing things that aren't there, seeing things, color. It's not like that. But for me, it just unlocked a deeper connection to this experience in my body as a human being on this planet. It just grounded me. And I remember walking outside barefoot in the grass, and just like crying, because I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm a human being, like it's okay, I'm not doing it wrong. It sort of helped me feel better in my own skin and start like a very long journey of like self-discovery, and like sort of, that I'll never be not on, obviously, but it unlocked something for me. And I know others where it didn't do anything for them. So I'm, again, not saying that everyone should go out and try this, but this is my story. And like another thing is I had this like Phoenix rising from the ashes public personality at the time. I was a trail runner, like, so I would run these ultra marathons, which is like anything above a marathon. So we're talking 30, 40, 50 miles, like in the woods, in mountains, carrying all your own stuff, like your own hydration, your own food. And I always joke around. I say that I used to pay money to run till my toenails fall off, like legitimately. That was a sport I did. It's dumb. I mean, I loved it though. Like it made me feel good. But when the chronic pain started, I slowly but surely like couldn't do that anymore. And I had like, an existential crisis, because I was like, all right, like I have this Phoenix rising from the ashes story that I tell like on stages and shit. And now I just want to die because like I can't run. Like it was like awful, all my like suicidal thoughts came back and stuff. And I'll say that if it wasn't for the plants and the fungi and the herbalism community, like I would 100% be dead. I mean, I felt so supported to try different things. And after leaving 12 step, if I didn't have, those folks, like, for example, after the psilocybin experiment went okay, and I didn't end up like with a needle in my arm in a gutter. I'm not saying you won't, but for me, it didn't happen. I felt safe to try, getting my New York State medical marijuana card. So I tried that to help me with my pain. It wasn't a panacea for me, to be honest. Like I didn't get like, it wasn't life-changing, but it was another tool in my box, and I was grateful for it. Some nights really suck, and it's cool that I can, try that. But, those are probably the things like people ask about the most. But beyond that, like, there have been so many herbs that have been helpful for me. Things I find in my yard. I spent the whole day just collecting violets, like, not the whole day, but hours collecting violets in my yard, because I want to make like some beauty products myself with them. They're beautiful. You can eat them. You can make lotion. It's like, there's so many things out there. But really what plants did for me is just unlocked this, like I said, this part of my brain where I feel connected in my own body. I feel like I have a place to go when I'm having a really bad day. I can walk into the woods and entertain myself for hours, just thinking about the relationships between the trees and the mushrooms and the plants and the animals. Like it's so complex and so beautiful. I finally slowed down. So when I stopped trail running, my relationship with the woods, it wasn't about conquering anymore. And that was a huge transition for me. So like trail running, climbing mountains for fun, the things I used to do, like, oh, I'm going to climb 3 14ers when I'm in Colorado and tell everybody about it. Like, it was fun, but like now, you know, when I'm in the woods, I'm not conquering anything. I'm like looking around and I feel a part of it, you know, and there's just so much knowledge there. So that slowing down started getting me like even more curious about the mushrooms, especially. I'm like, what even are these weird alien things everywhere? Oh my God, like, can you eat them? Are they going to kill me? And so I went to like a class, and this was like 6 years ago, and I've been like obsessed ever since. My partner has me saved in her phone as Mushroom Megan. Like, it became like an obsession, you know? And so I started learning about them, and now I'm a licensed forager. I have my mushroom ID, I call it now. Like, I have my licensed medicinal and edible mushroom foraging ID that has reciprocity in like 10 states or whatever. But you know, I none of this would have happened like if I had stayed stuck and not been open to, you know, change, and open to trying things, and you know, open to like trusting myself, like trusting what I thought was a good idea, because I was told not to trust myself. And you know, at the time I took the mushroom retreat thing, for example, I didn't have a lot of money. So I was like, well, I'm doing this thing, you know, but it opened like so many doors for me. And now I like lead mushroom foraging walks, and, you know, teach people like how to identify mushrooms. You know, all my friends send me pictures, like it's every single time it's the same thing. It's just like a group of mushrooms on the ground. What is this? You have to flip them over. You have to show me, like, is it gills? Is it pores? Is it teeth? Like, you know, there's, it's fun to teach people how to look at mushrooms. I always say, like, you're not going to leave here being able to identify all the mushrooms in the world, but you'll know how to look at them, you know? And those are things I've picked up from, you know, friends, and also classes. And I'm not a licensed herbalist, but I've, you know, started incorporating like all types of herbs into my life. One particular thing that really saved me, like my nervous system was shot a few years ago. I went through like a breakup, and moved and changed houses, and then COVID started, and I started using kava kava. It's this like root from like Hawaii, that area of the world. And, you know, things like that have like saved my life over and over again, you know, something to just like calm my body down. And sometimes I do want to feel like not altered, but I do want to feel something, you know. I think for me that's okay. I've got these, you know, elderberry cuttings here, like my friend gave me, and I'm growing, you know, elderberry, and supposedly just stick these suckers in the ground. I haven't tried it yet. So if anyone has any tips, let me know. But there's just so much, you know, healing to be found in the actual plants. And I'm happy to answer questions around that. But, you know, really what the connection to our ancestors that were here before us, because plants came way before anything else. Matter of fact, if it weren't for mushrooms, we wouldn't be here at all. This was just dirt. And then the fungi made it so that it was even inhabitable. So if it wasn't for fungi and plants, you know, we wouldn't even be here. I love learning about the indigenous American people, you know, how they say all my relations, and they mean like literally like we're related. They're like our sisters and brothers. And it's a really beautiful way to think about things. And if you have not heard about the way that the mushrooms use the underground root system to send messages between all the trees, I highly recommend like you find a podcast or something. Yeah, like legit. Like, so this tree here can find out if this tree over here is missing sugar, and the mushroom, the mycelium network underneath will be like, send sugar to tree 7 over here. And then all of a sudden they'll like send, you know, they all talk to each other. They're related. You know, this one will take care of this one because it's like its daughter or like sister. I mean, it is bananas. Like one more fun thing. And then, you know, if you want to ask some questions, one of the things that got me into mushrooms, like where I even cared about them. I mean, I knew about magic mushrooms when I was a teenager. I like ate them and stuff, but more than that, I was fascinated by cordyceps, which are the zombie mushrooms. And basically what these guys do, or whatever these mushrooms do, is they Their spores infect, for lack of a better word, insects. Specifically, let's call it an ant, right? Because this is the most famous picture you'll see. So the mushroom takes over the function of the ant, like basically kills it, controls its brain, makes it march all the way to the top of a tree, and then shoots out an antenna out of the top of it. I swear this, I'm not making this up. And then it shoots spores out so that more ants can get infected and become zombies. And this is a cordyceps mushroom. There's other types of cordyceps that attack other insects. And it's absolutely bananas. And I read it in National Geographic when I was in rehab, and that sparked my interest going forward. But they use the cordyceps, like I take a tincture, that it helps you with like brain function, because it's such a potent brain, entheogen or whatever. But yeah, there's just so much like interesting stuff going on out there that like sounds like science fiction. But yeah, that was how I first got interested, is the zombie mushroom.
Oh my God. I've got so many questions, and we've got questions from other people too. I want to touch on, you mentioned there's so much I want to touch on. You mentioned that that you started to explore all of these different areas that were interesting to you, and your connection to the earth and how it grounded you, and it sounds like that is very much like part of your recovery pathway, right? Is that sense of grounding, and I relate to that so much. I don't think I told you about this, but I'm from upstate New York too, despite my accent. So my question is, like, what gave you the confidence to explore those things? Because I know a lot of folks, when they come into the community, they're like, I'm frightened. I've been told that, this is the beginning of me relapsing or, returning to use. Like, what do you say to that?
Community. I mean, find your people, find the healthy people that will support you to try what you think is going to help you, and be there for you if it doesn't, because it might not go well. I can't say that it's going to. I also was very lucky. When I decided I wanted to stop taking SSRIs like 3 years into my recovery, and I went to my doctor, and he was like, no, you can just stop taking that. You won't get withdrawals. You're on a low dose. And needless to say, it sent me into a freaking nightmare. I was so sick, and like no doctors would help me. And a friend sent me to a holistic doctor, an herbalist, like acupuncture, like she does it all. And so I had a safe professional too to talk to. So I really recommend that people have someone like that in their life if they can afford it. If not, like, some people will just like volunteer. There's different organizations where people like that will volunteer their time, and just like having a guide, a guide that's professional, that's trained, to kind of bounce things off of, like, is this a good idea? Because I think it is, it is pretty helpful too. But yeah, just I had people I trusted.
It's such an important point. And I think it's really difficult when like your whole social support system is just a 12-step fellowship, because like the comprehension of anything beyond that is kind of mind-blowing, right? How did you leave?
It was slow, but there was a final straw. So there was this kid that was in jail, and at the time I was working as a recovery coach, and my counterpart, like a guy that works with me, met this guy in the local jail who was like getting out that day, and the town he lived in was a town that I hosted a meeting. And so he's like, oh my God, you got to go see Meghan. She's great. She hosts this meeting in your town. It's tonight, like the night you're getting out. Like, dude, you should go. And like this miraculous thing happened, right? The kid went, he came, right? Like you could tell he was like super nervous. He'd never been like, and he was just this really sweet, charismatic, like shy kid. And he came, and I like went right up to him because I'd never seen him before. I was like, oh my God, hi, how are you? Blah, blah, blah. And he's like, yeah, I just got out of jail. Like your friend John said I should come. I mean, I was like, oh my God, this is great. I was like so excited, and I went up to some of the men there because of the whole like men with the men thing, which used to really piss me off. And I went to some of the men that had, been in the program for a bit. And I was like, hey, that's Billy over there. Like, he just got out of jail and he's at a meeting. Like, isn't that great? They're like, well, yeah, but if he wants it bad enough, he'll come talk to us. I was like, yo, just give him your number. Like, just go say hi. And they're like, that's not how it works. I had to walk in the snow to a payphone to call, some bullshit. He died like a few months later. Long story short, I have his like card like next to me on my desk from his fucking funeral. And when it happened, I literally picked up these men in the program that think they're hot shit and was like, maybe he'll call you now. Like that sent me flying out the door. And I know that like not all places are like that. Not all meetings are like that. If it had been a different group of men, and maybe would have been, and I know that like, obviously that wasn't like make it or break it. But for me, it was like, that was the end of that. Like I could not, I just couldn't deal anymore. I had lost so many friends. And it wasn't serving me. I was finding like just getting more angry than feeling, like it was useful anymore.
Yeah, that is so tragic. And I'm really sorry for your loss.
Thanks.
I want to ask a few questions that have come in. And the first one is, in what form do you use do you microdose? Do you use a tincture or a certain gram amount or material? Of material?
Sure. I have a safe supply, which is hard when something is illegal, and something that I feel really strongly about. We should have a safe supply of any and all things that someone wants to take, whether it's botanical or not. Like that's something I feel really strongly about. I don't subscribe to like a hierarchy of like the things I do being better than, someone else. I think all drugs, people should have access. So just to put that out there, I always feel the need to say that when I'm talking about plants and herbs and fungi, because there is this hierarchical psychedelic space that sort of, puts them separate from like the other like harm reduction movements. And I think we should all just get along. But so personally, I use powder, like, I dry mushrooms and then like powder them. And I like just use like literally like a knife. Like I've tried weighing them before, but so I use such a small amount that it's like hard to find a scale that will weigh them. But I put it in lion's mane tincture. Lion's mane is another mushroom that's great for brain health. It's called the Stamets stack, Paul Stamets. You can look it up. It tells you exactly how much to take. I didn't invent the wheel. I just did something that other people told me worked well. It's supposed to be niacin, lion's mane tincture, and the powder. And it's like some people do like 2 days on, 3 days on, 3 days off, like once a week, or 5 days on, 5 days off. I'll do it like that for like 6 months, and then I'll take 6 months off of it, just to like give myself space to integrate, that's my way. But there's a lot of different, a lot of different things that people do out there. And it's become so prevalent that there's even like online trainings now. There's a resource called Third Wave. They do a lot of really great online trainings for microdosing. But the Stamets stack is what I do.
Thank you. And I really appreciate you, mentioning harm reduction principles and like equity among people who use drugs, right? It's really important. The next question is, can you speak about which herbs and mushrooms specifically heal the brain from drug addiction or alcohol misuse? I've heard of oat milky seed for stimulants and lion's mane for attention deficit, for example.
Yeah, well, lion's mane is some amazing stuff. And it's beautiful too. I mean, it looks, like it's going to heal you. It's just this like cascading mushroom with like white tentacles coming down the side. I mean, it's beautiful and it's really tasty. Good substitute for like crab, and yeah, it does really great things for the brain. They've just started studying, the ways that it helps our brain. But some folks do have great success with it for ADD. I, again, like use it in combination with microdosing. And milky oats is a amazing for your nervous system. It calms your nervous system. So I could see how that would be really great for someone coming off of stimulants. I don't know specifically about that, but it makes a lot of sense. Because it's something I take. Like I have a few that I mix up for we'll take one for a while and then switch and that's one that I tincture and use for stress, anxiety when my nervous system is just like wound up tight. That's a good one. So that makes a lot of sense. And there's lots of things that are being studied and how they affect substance use disorder. I mean, I'm sure most of you have heard, people tell stories about Ibogaine. Like I'm always in shock when I hear people say that they tripped on this really gnarly root from Africa and woke up and didn't have opioid withdrawals. Like what? Why aren't we spending trillions of dollars studying that? Right now, what? Are you kidding me? There's a thing like that exists. Or kratom, an over-the-counter, an herb that fills the opioid receptor without suppressing breath. What? And we're trying to make it illegal. There are so many things out there that at a time of mass overdose, mass drug poisoning from a poison supply, there are so many plants out there that have the potential to help us, to help our friends. So I think a lot of the things I experiment with and I learn about, I just see the potential if the criminal justice system would just get out of the way.
And the pharmaceutical companies too. Right?
Oh yeah, them too. Yeah, they suck. Well, the newest push to ban kratom was because there's a drug on the market that that isolates the mitragina, the compound, and they're trying to patent it for arthritis or whatever as a pain reliever. So that's why there was another push recently, because this company put a lot of money into a lobby. It's just I don't want to be one of those conspiracy people, but what? It was true. I looked into it. I was couldn't believe it.
I love how much you research. I think that's so important, especially when we're talking about topics like this and when we're, experimenting. I'm wondering, are there any, because a lot of these mushrooms are available to buy online in tinctures and powders, and I have a whole shelf. But I'm wondering, how do people decipher between the quality and the efficacy of them? Do you have any advice there?
Yeah. So when it comes to any mushroom health product, whether it's a tincture or a capsule or a powder for your coffee, they have all this mud water and stuff. What you want to see is that they use the whole fruiting body of the mushroom, not the mycelium. So fungi is an organism that's this white webby mycelium that's crawling under our feet right now. Anywhere you are, it's there. I mean, this thing, it's everywhere. It's the largest organism on earth, literally. The mushrooms are the fruit. They're the apple of the tree, right? Some companies, they just use the white webby stuff, which is amazing stuff, but it doesn't have the same compounds as the actual fruit. So you want to see that they use the whole mushroom. You want to think about where it's from. Was it ethically harvested, or did they just decimate a whole, just like anything else we like to think about. And that's one thing that's really important. As far as herbs too, when you get your network of people you trust, there are some companies that are known for being solid, that have been around for a long time. And then I think grow it if you can, if it's safe to grow what it is that you want to grow, if it's legal. I think growing is the best way to get the full benefit of something, because you're so connected to the medicine. You're so connected to I can't wait to use my elderberries from my elderberry tree to make syrup or whatever. There's just a whole journey you go on with the plant. If you're with it from growth all the way to tincture or whatever you're going to do. But it's good to think about that, because it's so trendy right now that there's so much BS out there. Every time I go to Instagram, there's some new company that's microdose tea, and it's what? It's gardenias or something,
That's so funny. And I think too, when a few years ago, when I was thinking about mushrooms and I'm, thinking about foraging and experimenting with different things. I think too, there's like a lot of misinformation out there about mushrooms, and you say fungi, not fungi.
Yeah, fungi or fun. I mostly say fungi. If I said fungi, it is strange because I don't normally.
No, it's probably like the way that my brain is processing it. And I appreciate you doing that. And I'm wondering, like, is there anything we should avoid, or like any tips that you have around safety when like going out and doing our explorations?
Oh, for sure. So and when it comes to any altered state, like whether it's because your mental health is in the shit, or because you took something, set and setting are the most important things. So set, like your mindset, like what's your headspace like? Do you feel good? Do you feel curious? Do you feel open to having an experience? It's like the same thing as if you're like agoraphobic now because you've been in your house through the whole pandemic and you're like going to go out in public. Like, do you feel ready like to do that? Because it might be weird. The same thing goes for like trying anything new, even if it's like something over the counter at the store, some herbal remedy, like. So make sure that you're in a safe setting. Also, like, so, make sure you have the right headspace, and then make sure that the actual space you're in is safe. Like, are the people around you safe? Do you feel like you have, a journal to write in so that you can remember your experience? Or are you someone that likes to draw or color? Do you need some like music, to make sure you're okay? So there's like a lot of things, and, it goes for cannabis too, because, I found it really interesting. There's this new, the Fireside Project. There's this new free peer support line for people experiencing altered states because of psychedelics. And they make it a point to say, including cannabis, because so many people are trying cannabis now that it's legal. And you hear more and more people saying they're using it for their recovery than ever before. And for a lot of people, it's not good. Like they have we don't like to say bad. They have a difficult experience and it's scary. They're like, everyone says this is going to calm me down, but I feel like I need to close all my blinds and like, like hide. So same goes for, like anything. Don't ever underestimate, like if you're taking on a substance you've never tried before, like set and setting are super, super important. And knowing that some of these things are illegal, that's important too. Are you safe? Do you have white skin? Because if you don't, like, you're more likely to like, have a problem or have police involvement, be profiled, racially profiled. Like there's a lot of privilege in me being able to take a medicine that's illegal right now because of how I look, that's something I always take into consideration too, unfortunately.
And what about like mushrooms, if like people were going to go out foraging? Because I know there are certain mushrooms that are poisonous, right? So like how would someone who is a novice who wanted to explore all of this, as well as considering those 2 points that you made, like know to how to navigate that?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because I can give a disclaimer, like never just like eat something you find in the woods. What I was taught is to get 3, if you think you know what something is, have 3 people verify it that you trust, that know what they're talking about, whether you join your local. So I'm in the Mid-Hudson Mycological Society, right? It's my mushroom club. You probably have one where you live. You just didn't know because it's a bunch of nerdy people like me hiding in a library somewhere, right? But, find your local herbalist, your local mycological society, and get 3 people in your network or a Facebook group or whatever of people that know what they're talking about, and make sure 3 separate people say, yes, that is a lion's mane. Yes. Yes. Okay, cool. But something to know that you can take a bite of something, chew it and spit it out when it comes to mushrooms, and you're not going to die. There's some mushrooms you can't even tell if it's the right one unless you do that. So unless you like cook a decent amount, like, and eat it, like you're not going to die or get sick or trip for that matter. You have to have a decent amount to get, like really sick. But you have to, take a class, like even an online class, buy some books, buy some some nerdy, I have like, I don't even know how many of these Audubon Society field guides at my desk. This is the fossils one, like my other nerdy hobby, but you know, these field guides are a great like way to start. There's ones for herbs, there's ones for rocks. I'm such a nerd. I have like 7 of them on my desk, birds, mushrooms. And then you start like making sure that you have people to verify it and just don't eat anything unless you know for sure what it is.
Right. Thank you. And there's another question. Do the mushrooms alter your mind? Are they a narcotic and subjected to random drug tests that follow federal guidelines?
Yeah, so some are, so like psilocybin, for example, is still a Schedule 1 in many parts of our country. In fact, most parts of our country. There's a bill in New York State now to try to decriminalize, and some other states are decriminalized. So if you live somewhere like that, yay, you're in good shape. I take a sub-perceptual amount, so I don't feel altered. But people take more than that and do feel altered. But there are many, many other mushrooms that are medicinal that do not cause any hallucination or any type of altered state. Like we've been talking about lion's mane a lot, and cordyceps, for example. Those are 2 that do not alter you. Like you're not like feeling like you can drive and do all your normal stuff. They just have medicinal value. Just like a lot of the drugs are synthesized fungi, like antibiotics. Like there's so many compounds that we have taken from nature and synthesized it in a lab and call it whatever drug. So a lot of them just have that same medicinal quality without any way of altering. One thing is the Amanita muscaria, like a lot of people, that's like the quintessential mushroom, like the red one with the white spots, right? Like Mario Brothers. So a lot of people that are, for good reason, afraid of, repercussions for using a scheduled substance. Some people have started to build community around microdosing with those because they're not illegal. They're not scheduled in America. So there's like networks of people. I do not know anything about them, just that people do that. And I'm curious about it. I listened to a podcast recently that was pretty phenomenal. But that's an alternative. There's other safe ways to microdose with other things that are not scheduled. You just gotta, like network with people. And it's unfortunate that we have to do these things like in this way, but until it's more widely accepted, this is how we got to do it. These are the talks we got to have.
Right. And we should be having more of them. Does anyone, we've got 5 minutes left. I want to respect your time. Does anybody have any questions that they haven't asked that they want to ask of Meghan, or if they want me to, if you want to put it in the chat and I can ask? You are free to unmute yourself. I've got so much to go and do now to fresh lobelia. What's the question, Derek?
I'll just unmute. I was a crystal meth addict in recovery back in the 90s, and an herbalist recommended fresh lobelia to me, and I'm just wondering if you've ever heard of that as something for coming off of stimulants.
I've heard the words, but I do not have info on that one. But I love that you found an herbalist that you could safely talk to about coming off meth. That's amazing. That's so cool.
Well, thank you.
Did you have a good experience with that plant?
I never tried it. I know that lobelia is an active ingredient in stop smoking formulas because it works on the nicotine receptor sites. So that I knew, but I didn't know about how to use it with meth.
Yeah, another thing, this is good, I think, helpful. When I was first learning about this stuff and I didn't have a ton of friends yet, I just had a few, I would go to my local like health food store, like not a chain, like find, even if you have to drive to the next town over or whatever, like the local health food store that has like an herbalism section. And I became like that annoying person that asked like a million questions about this stuff. I would go around, like I would drive like hours from my house to find like the nicest person that knew the most stuff. And I would just like chat their ear off about all the things. And sometimes there's people that are really qualified that are herbalists and know a lot that work in those stores. That can be a great resource too, for free.
That's like me in the plant store.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks, Megan. Is there anything you want to add that we've not touched on, or like any other resources you want to point people towards?
Yeah, I mean, even if like, because of allergies to things, or just if you're not feeling safe to try anything yet, like just even, I mean, forest bathing is this like trendy, stupid word, whatever, but like even just like in the winter, there's like barely anything going on, and just going outside and picking up rocks for a couple hours, like I'm a different person than I was when I left my house. There's just something about slowing down and noticing the things that are happening without us doing anything about it. That's just like really calming to my nervous system. I've mentioned nervous system about 100 times, but that's me. I'm really in my head and, an anxious person. And I get a lot of healing from plants and fungi without having to ingest them, because every breath you take has spores in it already. Like you don't have to like take anything. These things are so prevalent that it's a part of your life anyway. So might as well like learn about it, get out there, touch them. You can touch the mushrooms, touch the plants. And I know it sounds really cheesy, but there is some healing to be found there for me. And I think most humans have the capacity to receive that ancestral knowledge, that like healing also.
I had no idea that, because I always feel so great when I'm out among trees. And I love taking my shoes off and, and just kind of standing there. It's amazing. I love following your stories about, when you go out and you discover all these new things. It's amazing. Is there any way that people can follow you or connect or anything like that if they have any questions?
Yeah. So I realized that my name doesn't have my last name on it, but I'm putting my full name in the chat. And if you want to watch my stories that she's referring to on Instagram, I'm at Megan Upstate. I post lots of mushrooms and rocks, so get ready. It's really exciting.
Thank you so much. Like, I feel so informed, and I love that you are sharing this particular experience, because I think so often when we talk about life after 12-step recovery, we're just like, we can fall into that trap of like, oh, let's just talk about that, whereas you're talking about like all of these new experiences, and it feels so expansive. That's what I really love about what you've shared. So it's 6 o'clock. I'm gonna, and it's like later for you. I'm gonna thank you so much for your time, and we'll hopefully be publishing this in the next few days. And I'm gonna start recording.